Good morning. This is Kim Loudermilk, and I'm glad to welcome Mr. Tyler McGraw, who is a software engineer from Extend and also a code.org volunteer, and he will be sharing with us this morning how it's like to be a software engineer. So, Mr. McGraw, go ahead, and we're happy to have you with us this morning.
Yeah, so I'm glad to be here. As Ms. Kim pointed out, I am a software engineer. I've been a software engineer for about 10 years now, and I've been working with Hour of Code to present to schools all around North Carolina for about 4 or 5 years now. And so, yeah, I want to present to you all um, what it's like to be a software engineer, how you can get into it, and we'll go from there. So before I get into anything, I want to start at a baseline of getting everyone on the same page about what code and programming is. So code is basically programming statements or the instructions that a computer processor handles. And what that means is you can think of it like building Legos. So when you build a Lego set, you have these individual blocks that you stack together to make bigger and better things. And so code is basically those little building blocks that you use to build a bigger thing. And they come in all shapes and sizes, and they fit in different ways. So you can think of code like that. It's basically a set of instructions. So when you get a Lego set, basically you're going to be presented with an instruction manual in case you can't figure it out on your own, which you're more than welcome to. But that instruction manual is going to guide you on putting those building blocks together. And so that's basically what coding is like. You're following a set of, you're building a set of instructions to create what's called a program. And a program is just a collection of those instructions. So think of it like when you're building Legos, the Lego set that the instructions that you're creating are basically how to guide someone on building a Lego set. So building that instruction manual comes in different languages, which is my next point, which is what a programming language is basically a set of syntax or commands that you use to instruct a computer on how to build it, how to run a program. So think of it like if you were to go and build a Lego set yourself, like for someone else, you would create an instruction manual with a guide on how to build those Legos together to create a new thing. And that's essentially what you're doing with a computer. You're telling a computer, hey, go use those individual Lego blocks in this specific set of instructions. And once you follow those instructions, then you will now have, a beautiful, Harry Potter wizard set, or you'll have, any number of things. And so that's what a programming language is. It's a language you use to communicate to other people that this is like the set of instructions that you're going to use to build something new. And then that computer will interpret those instructions to build or run your program. So I want to start with a very, very simple example, and I'm going to get a little into math here, but know that it's not very difficult to follow here. So everyone here may know what algebra is, and if you don't, that's okay. I'll show you some examples in code here in a second. But in math, this is a typical algebra equation. So z equals x plus y, and let's assume that the value of x is 100 and the value of y is 200. Well, that means that z, the value of z, is 300 because 100 plus 200 equals 300. Now, the where this turns into code is there is some wizardry that we can now do with this algebra expression. So now I can tell the computer, no, actually, it's not z that equals x plus y, it's y that equals x plus y. And this is what differentiates coding from math per se. So I can tell a computer, you know, I no longer want z equal to x plus y. I want y to equal to x plus y. And so going a little bit further, I can tell the computer, hey, y equals wizard emoji plus magic ball emoji, or any number of things. And so it's basically giving instructions to a computer to run a process and tell it the information that it needs to, you know, create anything you want. And in this case, what I'm creating is y. So that's just a very simple example, and you know, we'll go into it a little bit more later on, but wanted to give you that little bit of a precursor before I talk about programming language and things like that. So I'll start off with a little bit about me so you all know where I'm coming from. My name's Tyler McGraw. I grew up in Hendersonville, North Carolina. I eventually moved to Raleigh and then Durham, North Carolina, and I'm now living in Winston Salem with my wife and my son. So here they are. That's me in the middle. And we also live with our 2 dogs, which are pretty crazy dogs. Love going outside with them and playing with them. So that's a little bit about me. I also want to talk about sort of what I've done a little bit. Some fun facts about me. I've worked as a software engineer for 11 years, mostly on mobile app development. And within those 11 years, I've worked on about 40 different software projects. About 25 of those were mobile applications. And then I've also, within my jobs over the past 11 years, I've flown to 8 different states to work with clients and interact with people that I needed to interact with for work. And then I've also worked with companies that make $20+ billion per year. And then I've worked with companies that make less than $1,000 per year. So I've worked in a very wide range of different environments where software is used. And then another fun fact that I have is that I know 17 programming languages. So one of them is C, another is C++, C#, Objective-C, Kotlin, and then all these other ones, and you get the picture. But as I was talking about before, programming languages are a way to communicate to other developers and computers on providing a set of instructions. And so one thing that I learned over the past 11 years is that all these different programming languages are different in very many aspects, much like you would, you know, tell someone English is very much different than a Japanese language. It looks different when it's when you're reading it. It's spoken different. And even like some of the phrases don't really translate well between Japanese and English. Well, programming languages work very much the same way. You know, C# is very, very different from something like Kotlin. And they share some similarities, and you can get some ideas that are very similar between the two, but ultimately they're communicated in a different fashion. But from what I've learned after, you know, developing in all these different languages is that it's not so much that, you know, learning new languages is the goal for being a good software engineer. It's more that you find the things that these programming languages share and carry that on through your expertise. You basically learn what you can take from each of those and apply the good parts to your next program and use that programming language in ways that you wouldn't normally use. So for instance, there may be a Japanese phrase that I've learned, and when I go to learn German or something, maybe that phrase carries over in a new way that no one really expected, and it is able to communicate something different and maybe better. So I'm going to first start by listing the things that we're going to talk about today, and there's 4 main highlights that I have here. So first, we're going to talk about school. So what can you do now? What can you do after you graduate from high school? And what was available to me at the time where I was at when you were in school, or when I was in school, and then what's available now for you. And then we're going to talk about what you can do to learn to code, the different ways of learning code, and how those can be applied. Then we're going to talk about what's it like to be a developer in the work world. You know, what does it look like day to day? What are the types of things that I'm doing? What are software engineers doing? And then we're finally going to talk about the future, talking about, you know, some trends that I've seen over the course of the past 11 years, and then also what you can expect for the next few years that are trending right now that maybe you should get involved in, and maybe you should, you know, try and dig into to find, you know, a passion project, or maybe even get into a career in that path. So first off, we're going to talk about School for Devs. So what I'm going to talk about first here is how I got inspired, just so you can draw some idea of what it was like for me to get into coding, and compare that with, you know, maybe how you can get into coding. So when I was growing up, my dad bought a really, really slow PC, and it came with a couple computer games. And that was kind of what drew me in. They were like just fun learning, programming, like informational, educational games. And I started exploring the computer because I loved it so much. So I just started opening up all the different pieces of software on the computer, like Microsoft Word, or, you know, any of those other ones that were out there at the time. And I started to get, you know, excited about exploring, you know, what was on the computer. I wanted to understand everything that was on the computer and how it worked, just because, like, I really just wanted to know, like, underlying what it was that a computer was used for, and how it can affect people, and also how it can be used to do some good. So yeah, it became exciting to figure it out. And then sort of like, I think when I was in late middle school to high school, MySpace came out. And it sounds silly, but MySpace had a lot of customization opportunities into your profile. So this is, you know, maybe older than some of you may know, but MySpace was the original, one of the original Facebooks. So you could customize your page in such a way that you like had different colors and fonts, and you could have flashing images and videos and sound and all sorts of things to make your you know, Facebook profile kind of thing custom to you, and something that people like found, you know, enjoying to go visit. So I got into it, and I figured out that I could customize it to how I liked, and I got further and further and started basically Googling, you know, how can I do this specific thing? How can I show a video in this particular way? And that really got me into web development. So web development entirely at a base level consists of HTML and CSS. And if you don't know what that is, that's okay. It's basically markup languages that define how a website looks. So you know, if you have an image in the top left corner and it is a round image, that can be created using HTML and CSS. And so that's what I really got into, and I started exploring, you know, more about web development. And it was in high school that I really got into it. In fact, my senior project in my school, we had to have a senior project where everyone, you know, got into a particular thing that they wanted to explore as a career opportunity. And so my senior project that I had to present on in front of a board of teachers was on web development. And one of the exciting things that I got into was that my parents helped me reach out to some local freelance web developers. And freelance just means they're working as a web developer to build custom websites for businesses, usually in their local area, but maybe abroad as well. So I was working with a lady that, showed me the reins of web development. It showed me like how to program a website. And so I presented on that, and that's really where I think the turning point for me was getting a mentor, her showing me, everything about web development, how to code properly, how to build a website that is presentable to the people out there in the world. And that's really what set me off to get into computer science in college. So I want to talk about a little bit about computer science in primary schools. So when I was growing up, there was no computer science classes at all. There were not even things that I could reach out to in the local area that were in addition to school. There were no meetups. There was really nothing. There was only the mentorship that I had to reach out directly to a freelance web developer about. So the opportunities have changed drastically since I was in school. And it's really, really a great thing, because we're finding now that software development can be used in almost every single industry out there, whether it's sports, building an app that showcases the football stadium that you're in, building Mars rovers, and even you can build software that works on a tractor farming corn in a field. It can really be used everywhere, and so there's a huge demand for software development, software engineers out there. And so I hope that after today that you can sort of understand what it is to be a software developer and kind of explore if that could be an opportunity for you in the future as a lifelong career. So one pretty neat thing is that Japan right now is making it mandatory for elementary schools to have coding courses. And that was a requirement by the government to have all public education primary schools to offer those classes starting this year. So, there's a huge driving change, and I think the United States is a little bit behind, but there are schools like North Carolina Virtual Private School that offers computer science and programming courses to you, and has other opportunities like the coding club. And there are things even outside of the virtual private school that allow you to get interested into coding and find ways to use code in your daily lives or to make the lives of others better. So I think that this list right here is something that you should copy down and really hone in on, because these opportunities were not there for me. And if you don't take advantage of these opportunities now, you may find yourself regretting that you didn't learn a little bit of code, because even if you don't get into coding as a career, coding can help you in any sort of career. And just knowing about code and how it works, I found in my personal life and through talking with friends and family that they wish that they could have used some code to write a little script to do something fun or to help them in their job. So just at least try and explore it and learn about it. So the next thing is learning to code. So where do you go from outside of primary school? Well, there's basically two different paths that you can take. One path is going to college. And so I think that going to college is a great opportunity for you to build a good foundation of computer science core concepts. So if you go to college, you'll take a very wide range of courses that allow you to explore the specializations, which I'll get into here in a little bit, within computer science, so that you can find the right career path. And I think that college is a great thing, a great tool for that. You can find the different ways that you can actually use code to do something that you are passionate about. It's not all about, just building websites and mobile apps. It's a lot more than that. And then also, it does help build a trustworthy resume for future employers. But I will say that it's becoming less necessary. In fact, my cousin, who graduated with a completely different degree in college, just recently took, within the last couple of years, a 10 to 12 week program with a university that was something that he didn't have to pay like a normal college tuition to. He didn't go to a 4-year college program. He went to it for 10 weeks. And after those 10 weeks, he found a software development job. And I think there's something to say about that you can learn how to code very, very, very quickly, and you can find a job very quickly right after you learn how to code. And even if you don't fully understand it, there are many companies out there that are willing to take you on as an intern. So you can do an internship at a company and find that you are able to be mentored through that company to build new things and help their company grow. But they will also, be willing to teach you new things and become a better software engineer. So those two different paths vary greatly in the terms of cost. College is going to be typically lots more expensive than going to a coding school. And I think it really just depends on your preferences and what you want to do. So know that even if you don't go to college for computer science, there is still an opportunity to come back to computer science and doing coding and finding a different career in coding. And then so the next step, I think, is really what you can do right now and in college and later in life is there are these different opportunities, these different resources out there for you to get involved in coding. And I think it really is broken down by the way that you learn. So for instance, the way that I learn is typically through sort of a social path and a visual path. I very much enjoy interacting with other software engineers, learning from their experiences, and then also just watching online courses, online videos. And so that is like how I learn. I have a hard time sitting down and reading a book that is 800 pages long and understanding the full depth of where that book went. It's just not how I learn well. But you may learn that way, so you should explore things like blogs, and there's this website called medium.com where a lot of software engineers post articles, and there's email newsletters, and there are books, but I would also say that books in software engineering are typically very, very heavy and more involved in the nuances and the intricacies of software development. So it can be hard to pick up as a person who's new to coding. And for that, I would personally recommend starting to explore coding using a visual path, specifically using something like Udacity or Udemy. These are websites, udacity.com, udemy.com, where they offer online courses, and you can go and learn from the very, very basic level how to code. Then there's also these other paths. So I didn't talk about all the things on social, but there's a lot of software engineers on Twitter. There are these things called meetups where other software engineers who work on the same thing. So for instance, I'm an Android developer. I build Android apps. And so there's an Android developer meetup that I go to where people talk about things that they've worked on, and they show me the code that they've used and help me understand new things. And it's a really great learning environment. I've also reached out to professors at universities just to ask them questions. So I think contacting people is a great resource. Going to conferences. So this is more of a thing that people do once they have gotten into the work world, but you can go to a development conference. There are conferences on everything possible. So you can do Android development, you can do iOS development, web development, backend development. There's artificial intelligence conferences. There's machine learning conferences. Everything is out there. Then there's also messaging platforms. So there's websites like slack.com where people have created a community and they talk back and forth with each other in real time, kind of like WhatsApp. And then there are other resources like Stack Overflow, and believe it or not, Reddit has subreddits where people talk about software development. So I think that definitely use those social aspects because that helps you get more involved quicker. Then there's also audio-based learning. So if you like just listening to things passively, there's some great podcasts for new developers or people who want to look at to get into code. The one that I would highly recommend is called Base CS. That's BASECS. And they talk about the fundamentals of computer science and where it's used and how you can use it. So highly, highly recommend that one. Then the visual one I've talked about a little bit, but people have also posted YouTube videos on how to learn how to code. You can pick up learning how to code on YouTube in the snap of a finger, and it's a really great resource. Then finally, hands-on, some of the great resources there are GitHub. So many developers put all of their code into a project like folder on GitHub, and so it's a website where they host their code. So all of the stuff that I type, all of the code that I type is hosted in a GitHub project. So I'll show that to you. Let's see, I think I have it here. So this is what it looks like. It's basically a list of folders where all of my code files are at. And so you can go there and you can explore open source projects where people have developed really awesome things like Android apps or like augmented reality, virtual reality type things. Like everything is on there, and you can help those people work on those projects. You can commit code to their projects and work with them to develop something great, which I think is an awesome opportunity that everyone should know that it's there. And then also, I've talked about this before, but mentorships. Mentorships are very, very vital in learning how to code, because when you have a question and you don't know where to get the answer, mentorships are easy to get your answers. So there's a website called codementor.io, and you can actually, with very little money, pay someone to help you learn how to code, and they will interact with you. They will do video chats and help you explore and learn and answer all of your questions. So I think that that's a great opportunity if you have, a reasonable means to do so. And then finally, the last thing that I'll mention is just exploring and getting inspired by other things that are out there. That's kind of how I get inspired on a daily basis, by learning about what other people are building on. And so, just going out there and, downloading mobile apps or looking at websites or reading articles about artificial intelligence and just figuring out what people are doing out there, like Google building a self-driving car. If you want to get into computer vision, as they call it, which uses artificial intelligence behind the scenes, there are countless articles on that, and you can easily get inspired to get into that career path. So those are the opportunities there. I hope that you take them. And then the next thing that I want to talk about is just kind of finding the specific passion that you have, or you may have, or want to get into. So in software engineering, there are in computer science and software engineering, there are different specializations that you can get into, and you will learn about these in college, and you will explore these because you'll have to take classes on many of these. in order to pass college. And then I want to also mention that there are different industries that software engineering and computer science applies to. So just to name a few of these, some of you know what artificial intelligence is, software engineering, that's what I do, security, cryptography, there's user experience design. Some of you want to maybe build a video game. Game design is huge in North Carolina. In fact, North Carolina State University has one of the best video game development programs in the nation. Computer graphics and computer vision. So these are like looking and reading text on a screen from an image, or using computer vision to drive a self-driving car. And there's robotics and data science and networking, embedded systems, and theory is more of an educational path. So if you like exploring the rudimental basics of computer science and teaching others about theoretical concepts, that's also a path. And then what's kind of cool is that each of these different specializations can be mixed and matched with all these different industries. So you could do something like security in the automotive industry. I read an article last year about how someone hacked a car and was able to stop the car from driving while the person was driving it. That is a huge problem. And if you got into security and went into the automotive industry, you could solve that problem. You could prevent people from hacking other people's cars and stop them from causing trouble. Or let's say you want to get into artificial intelligence. You can use artificial intelligence in something like, let's say, space exploration or healthcare. You could build a Mars rover that knows what to do once it finds a specific type of mineral or something on the ground. You can build something that artificial intelligence is heavily used in healthcare nowadays in order to detect signs of cancer, and it's helping doctors prevent people from getting cancer that is something that affects them long term. And so it's very, very important, and I will emphasize that this is one of the trends in computer science that I see is artificial intelligence is going to be, when you graduate from college or when you go beyond high school, artificial intelligence is going to be used in every one of these industries. And I can't emphasize enough that it is a huge opportunity for anyone out there to build something that has a significant impact on the way that people live. And then next, I want to get into, what it's like to find a job in software engineering. I want to get into what it's like as being a software engineer, as software engineer in work life, beyond college, beyond high school. So first off, what is it like finding a job? Well, you have to keep in mind some of these different aspects when you go to interview with companies. There are many resources out there, especially if you go to college. There are people that are employed by colleges to help you find jobs. Likewise, if you go to like a code boot camp, there are people that are employed there, and they will make sure that you get a job in software development. Like, it's their goal too. So there are definitely resources out there if you go with those two paths. But even if you don't go those paths and you learn coding on your own, and you just watch some videos and you want to get into it on your own, I will say there are many resources online specifically designated for finding jobs within software development. You just have to go and Google them. You really just search for software development jobs, or search for artificial intelligence jobs, and there are many websites out there that will help you find a job. But once you start finding a job, you want to keep some of these things in mind. So working for a large corporation is going to be very, very different from working for a small startup. I've worked in both of them, and they have their benefits and their detriments. But you can read up on those online and figure out what's the right fit. Would you rather work for a company like Apple or Google or anything out there that's widely known in the media? Well, there's some benefits to that. One of them is that you get to work for a great company that will provide you with lots of benefits. The downside is that maybe you don't get as much responsibility or freedom to do what you want. And that's not true for every company. I'm not saying that Apple doesn't give you freedom or Google doesn't give you freedom. They do give you freedom. I think it's just, you have to explore it. What is it like to be a developer at Google or Apple or something like that? And you can go and Google that. You can go Google, what is it like to be a software developer at Google? And people have written articles about it. So just, try and find what you want to do and what makes the most sense for you. There's also working for a small startup. So with a small startup, you have lots of responsibilities, but you also have lots of freedom. So you may end up working a little harder, but it's very rewarding to see that you built an app that everyone uses out there that maybe only you or one other developer built. That's the path that I like to go to, but it's not necessarily the path that you may like to go to. So just explore those. Another thing is location. So there are software engineer jobs all across the world. I will say that there are there's huge hubs across the United States and across the world. Some of those are New York City, Boston, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, Denver, Colorado, and then California, San Jose, San Francisco, and then Seattle, Washington. Those are huge hubs, but you don't have to go work there. I work remote. So what does that mean? What does working remote mean? Well, I basically have a job for a company that exists in a completely different state. So I work from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, but my company is in New York City. And I will say that this is a huge trend in software development. There are more and more remote jobs out there that are becoming more available. And companies are starting to realize the benefits of hiring remote developers. And some of those benefits are, if I need to go take care of my dogs at home over lunch break, I can go drive home, and I do this. I drive home every single day at lunch and take my dogs out and play with them. And I get to come back into what's called a co-working space and work around other people that are working on completely different things and working for different companies all across the world. And so it's a very cool opportunity. And I will say that there are some pretty cool programs out there for remote development. So if you find a remote job and you get out of high school or college and you want to take on a coding position somewhere, there are programs out there that you can pay a part of your salary, and they will help you travel all around the world. One of my good friends actually did this. He paid a small portion of his salary to this company that allowed him to build basically a package for him to fly to Bermuda or Munich, Germany, or London, England. All over the world. He got to travel while doing his job. So he would work, a normal 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 job, but he would do it in different cities every month. And so I highly recommend, while you're still young and you don't have as many responsibilities that hold you back, figure that out, because it's a really cool thing. He had lots of fun. You got to meet tons of people, got to experience different cities across the world, all while doing what he loved, which was software development. And then finally, going through these really quickly, you want to figure out what type of team you want to work with. What are the benefits? Does the company have a good culture and set of values? Are they doing something good for the world? Are they contributing back to it? Are they donating? And then the best question that you should ask yourself is, am I going to learn and grow here? Because if you aren't going to learn and grow there, then it can be a hindrance to your career. You want to find a place that helps you, learn and explore new things, because as I mentioned at the bottom of this slide, software development requires that you never stop learning. It is a part of my daily job to learn, and I learn constantly, and I want to learn because it's something that I'm passionate about. I get to learn as part of my job. Like, it's a great opportunity. I can find ways to apply myself in ways that I had never imagined before if I just continue to learn. And so if finding a company that allows you to do that is a huge, huge key. And then finally, just listed some of the different types of languages and platforms that you can go and dive into. If you find a job, you can do front-end web development, mobile development, game development, and these are some of the languages that you'll use for each of those types. And we can talk about, if you have questions later on, we can go through some of those. So what's it like day to day? Well, I open up what's called an integrated development environment. And basically it's just a program that I pull up, kind of like Microsoft Word or something, where I type my code in, and it's where all of my code for the Android application that I'm building exists. And I just start working on a new feature. So working at my company, like we work with credit cards and virtual credit cards a lot. So I may create a new feature that allows people to share a virtual credit card in a new way. If I was working on something like, I don't know, working on augmented reality app, maybe I, add a little icon when people are walking down the street and opening up Google Maps or something, and they pull up their phone and look at the street. Maybe it shows an icon in the street of where they want to go. That's a feature. And then a bug is typically, it's called a bug because it's a problem in the code. There's something wrong with it that a user found, or when you go and open up an app on your computer or your phone and it like crashes, like it just closes out. Sometimes that happens. That's typically a reference to a bug. There's something wrong with it. It's not behaving in the right way. So I work on features and bugs and tons of other things as I've listed here. So the feature changes I've seen in the last 11 years. One of the big things is there have been tons and tons of changes in web development. So when I first started out, I mentioned that I was working on a MySpace profile and building it and customizing it with HTML and CSS. And I was doing that by hand. And what I mean there is, like, I was literally typing HTML code and CSS code into a file. Well, that's changed significantly since then. PHP, JavaScript, like all these different scripting languages have come out. There's different programs and frameworks that came out. And then there's different patterns that have come out, like responsive websites. And what that means is basically, when you open up a website on your computer and you open up the same website on your phone, it's the same website, you're visiting the same web page, but they've built it in such a way that it works best for a mobile device, because maybe, the different buttons have shifted to a different part of the screen or something. And that's what responsive websites is. There's been things coming out like WYSIWYGs. That's what this WYSIWYG acronym is. Basically editors, tools that you can use to create websites without coding. And that's been a huge trend. It's still a huge trend. And there have been other things that have come out, like progressive web apps, where you can download the website to your phone as if it were an app, like a mobile application. So those are like some of the crazy things that have happened in the last 11 years. And my big takeaways are that, and I mentioned this before, I think, where that learning new programming languages isn't really the goal of being a good software developer. The programming languages, as you see on the right side here, some of them are languages, some of them are different things. But HTML, PHP, JavaScript, ASP, CSS, those things, TypeScript, those things are different programming languages, and they've changed over the past 11 years. And I've learned a lot from all of those, but that's not the goal of being a good software developer. You can learn a new language and still not really understand software development, but it's what you use from learning with that language that you carry on to your next project or your next job in your career, or doing a side project like your personal project that you're building, like a personal app or something. Those things that you carry on are what the goal is. You learn from your experiences and adapt to new technologies. Finally, some of the trends that I see now in software development. As I mentioned before, remote work. It's a huge trend. It's taking off. People and companies are realizing the benefits of it. So I think it's something to watch. Some people don't like it. Some people don't like remote work. They like working in an office with people, interacting with them and talking with them. That comes with its benefits, and it just depends on the type of person you are. I still interact with everyone at my company. I message them on a thing called Slack, kind of like WhatsApp, and I interact with my colleagues on a day-to-day basis. So it's just whether or not you want to be within an office that your company is at, or you want to just be at home or travel. So that's a huge trend. Multi-platform development is a big trend. So right now, there are tools out there where I can build an iOS app, an Android app, a website, a wearable app like a smartwatch app, a desktop app, all in the same program, all in the same project. So there's a huge trend for that because you save a lot of time. You can build an app that works on all these different devices and platforms. And I've seen personally some pretty big benefits from that. And finally, there's artificial intelligence, which I've already talked about. Automation is just speeding up your development process. Like how can you, or it may be speeding up other people's processes, like their daily lives, automating things like with scripts that run programs in a quick way to solve a problem. And Internet of Things is taking off as well, and it's been taking off for a while. Building these little embeddable device or sensors like video monitors outside people's homes, or my friend works at a company where they put these little embeddable devices in the corners of the room at the customers that he works with, and they measure the temperature of the entire manufacturing facility. And if it falls below a certain temperature, it sounds an alarm. And so he's built these little, software, he's built software with these sensors in order to detect those changes in temperature and alert people when they need to. So Internet of Things has many, many possibilities, and it's still rapidly growing. And then finally, I listed a link here. It may not be super easily readable with this font, but insights.stackoverflow.com /survey/2019. This is where tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of developers have answered questions, and you can go see like what is the trendiest programming language right now, like what are people using for their programming, what types of industries are people getting into with software engineering, what do people like in software engineering. There's like countless amounts of data there that are kind of cool to like learn about and explore. So you can get a better understanding of what it's like to be a software engineer just by looking at the information that they've collected there. And finally, before we get to some questions, just want to leave you with some advice that I've learned over the years. And so I'll start off with, you can learn to code very quickly. You don't need to know, honestly, you don't need to know math at a very high level, or at a very low level. You don't need to, understand all these very things that people talk about when they talk about code. You just have to Google it. You can start writing a program in Python today. I guarantee you, if you want to learn it, you can go and watch a YouTube video and you can understand the basics of programming like a Python app or a website or a mobile application today, and you can pick it up very easily. You just have to Google it or Bing it, or any other search engine out there. Just use the search engine. The next one is start with quick online courses. I think that's what helps the most people that I've seen, that I've interacted with. A website that I've used personally is called udacity.com, and they have courses that expand across artificial intelligence, mobile app development. In fact, Google has created courses with Udacity to tell you how to build an Android application. There's website development. There's all sorts of things in computer science. And then just know that it can feel overwhelming at times. There's a lot to learn. And honestly, I'm still learning about software development and even Android development after 11 years of doing it. So I never stop learning, and it can be overwhelming. There's so much stuff to be able to do and learn about code. So don't get overwhelmed with it. Don't get frustrated with it. It can be kind of scary, but know that everyone experiences this. I don't know a single coder or software developer that has like not felt this feeling. But the way that you can solve that is just asking questions. Ask questions every day. Google it. Ask your friends. Ask people that you find online who are software developers, and generally they'll reach out and help you. Learn something new as often as possible. Like I said, I'm learning every single day. If you stop learning, then you'll sort of fall behind. But I think that there's something to be said that coding expands across all these different industries and specializations, and there's so much you can do with it that it would be kind of sad if you didn't just try to learn something new every single day or every week or every year. Just go and explore what's out there and find your passion. And so that's it. That's all I had. I will, before we get into some questions, show you kind of what it looks like in my code, like what I'm doing right now. So it's not like all algebraic expressions or things like that. I'm building, like, particularly, this is a new feature that I'm building in an app right now. And you can see on the right, there's like some buttons and some text views and things like that that create a new screen in a mobile application. And then the code that I'm writing it kind of looks like this. It's not all like math and logic and things like that. There are some it may look scary right now, but these are very, very simple things to learn, and you can do it today. So with that, I'll open it up for questions if anyone has anything. So I guess one of the things that I can start talking about now, if no one has a question, is, where do I find the most fun? Oh, there's a lot of chats going on. Feel free to talk and open it up on the video. Let's see, there's a lot of questions here. So I'll just start from the bottom. Does each language have their own certification? Certifications are a thing that are generally built for enterprise software. So you don't have to have certifications. I can guarantee you can get a job without any certifications. You can go and just learn and go to a coding boot camp or college and learn about coding. And you don't necessarily have to have that paper, certification that you show to a company to say, hey, I know this thing. You can just tell them, I know JavaScript, or I know, Java, or any of those other programming languages out there. And as long as you can kind of prove that you know that, share some things that you've worked on with that programming language, they'll generally trust you. Let's see. Yeah, if anyone else has any questions, I'm an open book here. Do you take some type of skills test or share a portfolio? Yes. I don't typically take a skills test per se. Different companies have different processes for interviewing. So, one company may ask you to, you know, do a whiteboard drawing of code, and you don't necessarily have to like know how to code with a whiteboard marker, but just the general concepts of like what you would do. Like basically what I talked about earlier is like creating a set of instructions, how you would build that Lego set with the instructions. That's what they want you to do in front of them on a whiteboard. So you would just basically create like this little list of things that you would be doing to solve a particular problem. Some companies do that, and then other companies will basically just ask you what you've worked on. What types of apps have you built? What types of projects or companies you've worked at? So there's not necessarily a skills test, but I do think that it's a good thing to build a portfolio. I have a website that I've built to sort of showcase what I've worked on before. It's very, very simple. It's very basic. It lists some things that I've done. Anyone can build it. You don't even have to you don't have to know code to build a website or a portfolio page. So that's something that I think is beneficial. I don't think it's necessary though. I think you can walk into an interview for a coding job, a software development job, and as long as you have your resume, your paper resume, I think that's the most important thing, is a paper resume with the things that you worked on, the things that you're passionate about, and your past experience, what you've learned, what you've used to learn. Something like, you can even list udacity.com as your source of learning. You don't have to go to North Carolina State University like I did. You can go to udacity.com, learn coding, and put that on your resume. And I think that many, many companies will hire you. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Keenan's at North Carolina State's library right now. Yeah, so let's see. Is there any other questions that I missed here? How do you typically interact with databases? Yeah, so being an Android app developer, even on mobile phones, there are databases behind the app, especially if you need to save some information. So there are different types of what are called query languages. So when you have some data that's saved on your phone or any device for an app, you're basically going to create a query. You're going to, like a search engine, you're going to search a particular set of data to show it to the user. So for instance, I work on an app that shows like credit cards. So I would have a database of credit cards, and I would say, get me all of the credit cards that belong to this user. And so I am going to create a query, and it's code. I'm using code to create that query. I'm telling the computer, go and fetch me all the credit cards from this database. And if you don't know what a database is, it's basically, just think of it like your mom's or your dad's storage that they throw up in the attic. All those Christmas ornaments that are in a box. You have to go and fetch them. You have to open it up, and then you have to pull them out, find all the Christmas ornaments that you want to put on the tree, and then close the box. So that's kind of what interacting with the database looks like. And that's what it is. It's just storing things. So you basically write code to query a database for all the credit cards or whatever it is. It can be anything. And so on a daily basis, I'm also on a mobile app working with a database that saves all of the credit cards and things like that. Yeah, it was mentioned that Google Firebase is a great a database. Firebase has a lot of different tools, but one of them is saving data, and it's a great tool to get up and started with a website, that saves data for mobile apps or websites. And so you can use Firebase that syncs in real time data that's stored in the cloud. And I've used that on a personal project. I've used Firebase. I think that's a great outlet for storing data. I think it's something that's generally secure, and it's very easy to interact with. All right, I think if there's any other questions, I think that's it. So thank you all for listening to me talk. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that you've, sort of found a way to get into coding, and sort of learn about my past experiences and how you can get into it. So I really hope that you find and take one of these tools that I've given to go and explore coding, at least on a very high level, just to learn about it. And if you want to explore it more, there's many more opportunities to find a career within it. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. I certainly have learned so much, and I thank you for sharing your information, your expertise, and just your time with us. And we just appreciate so much this opportunity to learn more about coding, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you all.
Okay, guys, we'll end our meeting and thank everyone that came. It was wonderful. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye.